Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Planet FPL Clash of the Correspondents, the first of three that we're going to be recording for you ahead of game week 9. First up, let me introduce you to our Newcastle United correspondent, Simon Bibby. How are you, Si?
Hello, James. Doing well, mate. Thank you.
Good man. And our Crystal Palace correspondent, Ruaidhri McLaughlin-Dowd. How are you, Rory?
I'm good, James. All good.
Good stuff. Simon, you were with us during the last international break, and you told me and you told us that you were concerned. Since then, you got 8 at Sheffield United, 4 points from the first 2 Champions League games, draw in Milan, beat PSG 4-1. Are you still concerned?
Did I say I was concerned?
Yes.
That's not what I remember. Well, it's not what I did because I put Newcastle players in my FPL team, so maybe I
What
had a little
what do
rethink
what do you
afterwards.
remember then?
I remember thinking that the international break, like it usually does for us, kind of usually comes at a good time just because of the type of football we play. I remember you actually last season was saying how we might run out of gas, and it
You
seemed to
never
be that
did.
we never did, but also those international breaks I think helped us. And the fact obviously we won't play midweek games a lot of weeks, but again, I think it's probably come at a good time to reset before the Palace game. So maybe I was a bit concerned. I think if I remember correctly, it was more about just wanting to see certain things from the next game. And I did see certain things in the Brentford game, namely the fact that like we were getting our defensive discipline back after Milan and Brentford. And that's kind of why I think you've probably seen an upsurge in people talking about Newcastle defenders in the last couple of weeks. And the Isak Wilson thing, I actually went Wilson. I think that was one of the shouts I might have made on the last pod as well. I thought he would come in for a little run, and he did before getting injured. So yeah, that's what I remember from the last one I did.
Is he still sitting there out of interest, Wilson?
Nah, he's gone. I swapped him for Watkins last week. I saw an Eddie Howe presser where he said that Wilson was pretty close, and he just looked like he had that kind of bullshit look on his face that he sometimes does when he talks about injuries and players coming back or not. Just it felt like too much of a risk to go 2 weeks. I had, like everyone else, I had like 1,000 flags to deal with as well, so didn't take the risk on that one.
Rory, your team's 1 point behind Newcastle. It's a good start, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah. Pretty happy with the way things have gone so far. I think. But I mean, there've been shades of luck. I think it's 3 clean sheets in a row actually in the last 3 games. But then I would have hoped, looking at the start of the season, Fulham at home and Forest at home, I would have hoped to get a little bit more from. But 2-0-0s, in the Premier League against what are probably for us rival clubs until we get to 40 points. Relatively happy with the draw. Winning away at Old Trafford is obviously fairly unexpected given the amount of injuries we had, but they're not in a great position either. But overall, this start has been pretty good. The next 2 games are fairly rough for us, but then I think we've gone a little bit of a run. I think 4 and 5 look quite good. Really, if we can get 2 wins there, you need 10 wins to stay up, say. So then we're halfway there. So from our perspective, given our aims, I'd almost rather, I said this on the Slack to a few of the Palace fans who were there after the United game. I said I'd almost rather swap those results around and still be in the cup, because I feel like safety, we've got a decent team, but really what we're achieving, what we're trying to do as a football club, I'd rather have got to the next round of the cup where we would have played size team and probably lost, but I'd rather have that hope for another couple of weeks rather than just waiting for the FA Cup third round draw.
That's interesting because obviously you lost at United in the midweek before the league game. And I think because of injury issues you had and stuff, and we'll come back onto them, no one gave you much hope at Old Trafford in the league, despite question marks over United's form. And in fairness, they played really well against you in the Cup. One well-known radio station, which Suj listens to sometimes that I never listen to, actually did a piece the following day and said, what's the point of Crystal Palace?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, and then I put on the Slack channel for the patrons after this that something similar that was along the lines of, oh, we'll have a meltdown, we'll be fine for a bit, sign some randomer on loan in January, then we'll have another meltdown when we go at the FA Cup and finish 12th, because that seems to just be what we're doing. I mean, we mentioned this in pattern. We're just sort of going from season to season, just maintaining Premier League status, which I think has a lot to do with the ownership situation at the club, which is a bit difficult, as we covered at that time, difficult to get the investment to go on to the next level. So
this is all very triggering for me to hear, Rory. It sounds very similar to what my club used to be
yeah.
in.
Go on, Si, throw in an opinion on it.
Well, literally just all of that. I mean, throw in a couple of relegations and bounce backs, and you're pretty much Newcastle of the last decade or 20 years before the takeover. So
Yeah, but
yeah, I know what it feels like.
you guys are sort of big enough to bounce back, I guess.
Yeah.
You've got a floor, whereas our floor, I guess, is probably League One, and our ceiling's probably mid-table in the Premier League until something else happens in terms of investment. So it's a bit different, but yeah, I know it's basically what you guys went through under Ashley, but for kind of different reasons. Our owners have money; they just see us as an asset in a portfolio rather than anything else.
But sitting ninth, Rory, I mean, it kind of feels like the league's split into two this year. I mean, partly because of West Ham start as well. It really does feel like there's an expected top 10 and an expected bottom 10. And with respect, I think you fall into that line of expected bottom 10 at the moment because of investment, injuries, a lot of things. But you're top of it, right? You're ninth.
Yeah, and I'd take that, but that was similar last season, wasn't it? And we were 12th for however long. We had an awful fixture run, but even at the end of that fixture run, we were still 12th and we were in a relegation battle. I think from our perspective, we'd obviously be happy to finish on top of that pile that you've just suggested there. But if we get our first 11 on the pitch, I feel like it is a good cup team because defensively it's very solid. We don't give away a great deal. And so that's why I'd rather we'd done something in the League Cup and sort of looking forward more to the FA Cup because I feel like safety is, not assured. We've got to win the games, but I feel like we will be safe. And being defensively solid, as we've seen from the way numerous managers have approached international football, if we've got Lerma, Doucouré fit, Elise and Eze fit, I feel like we can do damage to teams, be defensively solid, and do something in a cup game where you can beat anyone on your day,
If they're fit.
Yeah.
Simon, God.
I was going to say, I mean, another thing that's been a point of discussion among Palace fans over the last couple of weeks is sort of the training methods and whether there's sort of a increase in fatigue. Because last time we had Roy, we had the oldest squad in the league and we lost the most games due to injury. And so the rationalization was when you have older players, they get injured more often, it takes longer to recover. Now we've got quite a young squad and it's the same thing with the same manager. So there's sort of a question mark over whether the training methods have something to do with the amount of injuries.
It came down a lot under Vieira, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Yeah, but then when he left, people were complaining about the quality of the training sessions. So there's a few different ways to interpret it. I mean, it's only the start of the season. If it continues throughout the whole season, there are questions to answer, I think.
Yeah, fair.
You can't blame him for Lerma anyway, because that was international football, and Elise was international football. Doucouré wasn't so injured he couldn't go and play with Mali because he's gone on international football now. So I don't know how much there is still an injury crisis, except in creative areas.
Okay. So I talked about these Champions League games, mate.
PSG one, I think it's just one of those nights that when you get a new ownership of the club and you get investment or perceived investment, that's kind of the nights that you dream about. Is the one that we had last week. It's just incredible. Best game, best result of my lifetime. I put that above in terms of everything else, above the 5-0 against Man United. I'm that old.
I was going to say the Barcelona 3-2 as well. Yes, Asprilla hat-trick.
Bigger than that. I think.
Why?
I think just because in terms of like that Asprilla hat-trick was just sort of came out of nowhere. That was almost like we look back at that almost like a kind of cup shock result. But a kind of lesser team, and obviously it's fantastic. And the fact that the player scored a hat trick, you're going to remember that night, and everyone has talked about that night for 20 years. But this just felt like different. This was like a team collective effort. It was tactics, the manager. I've never seen or heard St James's Park like that for every interaction that happened. You saw all of the stuff that people were taking a piss out of on Twitter about the cheering and throw-ins and like the box went in. But that was symptomatic of the press that had been applied and the tactics and how it was all going. And yeah, just an incredible night. I can't wait for Dortmund.
Okay, nice. Is this midweek playing with the press though in the Premier League? You alluded to obviously what I'd mentioned, concern that you might burn out last year. You absolutely didn't. If anything, you got stronger. Is there concern now, or are you seeing adjustments in the way that the team's playing off the ball?
I think there is. I think there was a few signs at West Ham actually at the weekend. I don't know if it was because the PSG game was that big and there was that much effort put into it, and I don't know if we would necessarily need to get to that level again or could get to that level again. But I think it was more like mental fatigue, and I think Hal might have mentioned a thing or two about it, like the goals we conceded. Partly down to a few players not being available, but also just I think mentally, like a slight lapse, which we hadn't been shown for the last 4 or 5 weeks since I think I was last on. So that I think is a bit of concern. Like, yes, hopefully Botman will be back, and I think he's due to come back for the Palace game because I think we need him in the back line. But yeah, I think just more mentally than anything else. And you saw from interestingly playing West Ham, they're obviously used to it now, having played that kind of Thursday, Sunday most of last season. So yeah, I think once we're hopefully into kind of the latter stages of Group 1 and maybe moving on, we'll kind of learn on the fly and have picked up that experience. And then hopefully we can just kind of keep the injuries under control and it should be manageable.
You think you'll get out of that group then?
Yeah, I think so.
Look at that confidence. Like it, mate. I have
Yeah,
to say,
so
I think
well,
most of
points
us
next home game.
When we saw the draw, I think most people were like, "Wow!" But then it settled down. I still think they'll get out of it. That was the general opinion from most people. I think.
Yeah, I think the way that we're set up again, I think we are like, we have the potential to do well in cup competitions, and we're treating the Champions League, I think, every game like it's a cup final. It sounds cheesy to say it, but like in terms of Milan, like we were determined to get that away point. Win your home games. I think if we win the next game, we're on 7 points, and it helped the Dortmund and Milan drew as well. So I think win the next game, and we're potentially like only one result away, or not losing our third home game away from qualifying.
Yeah, no, you've done really well in terms of the start there, and obviously the league results have picked up. I guess with what you've had, we'd have expected it. Brentford at home, and then obviously Sheffield United, Burnley, and then obviously the trip to West Ham. I guess 10 points from that 4 is kind of par the course now. But there was this mad game at Bramall Lane in the middle. But what was that as an experience watching that as a fan for you?
Just like, that was carnage. It's absolute carnage. And particularly it's like from a fan point of view, like, so it's particularly since Hal's come in, and like you can tell like when we're going to hump teams, like when we're really on it and things start to go our way and we're taking our chances. I didn't think it would be 8. It just kind of, we started off quite, like Sheffield United started off quite well on that game. I think their tactics threw us a bit. They changed it up from what I've seen of them this season. And then once we kind of got the goal and figured it out, it was just, it was insane. It still doesn't feel quite real. Whereas like the Paris Saint-Germain game, it's, I don't know, for some reason that kind of feels like it happened. Whereas the Sheffield United game, you kind of struggle to comprehend winning 8-0. It's just not something that happens to a lot of teams that regularly. And particularly like from an FPL point of view, the amount of points that were flying around everyone.
I mean, you say you get like the same points for it, but it's almost like a 3.5 point win, isn't it?
I mean, goal difference, yeah. Yeah, particularly is how tight it might be this season. And I don't think we're gonna get pumped in a lot of games. So yeah, I think it kind of already puts us like, I think puts us above Chelsea, Man United.
You've got the joint best goal difference, mate.
I know. We've got the best XG. I can't remember exactly what the XG was from that particular game, but I know we've got the best in the league currently. And I imagine like scoring 8. I think the XG of that game was 4.
Yeah, roughly. I remember from memory.
Yeah. So even without that, if that was a normal game, we'd still be kind of up there. So yeah, interesting. I think we've on paper had one of the more difficult schedules, but we're still creating chances and in the right games, in the right scenarios, looking like we're not going to concede many, which is a good recipe for getting points.
So Palace at home next. They've got injury issues. You're now in good form. International breaks come at perhaps a breathing point again to you. This is a certain 3 points, is it? Or is it certain for last on match of the day?
Let me have a look and see who else is playing. I mean, you've got Brentford, Burnley, and Bournemouth, Wolves. I don't know, and Forest, Luton. I guess that's
Rory's smiling away, and I think Rory might know why I've said that.
Do you remember last year, Si? Do you remember how many goals were scored in 90 minutes in 3 games because you played each other in the League Cup?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like, I mean, it's got the potential for another scoreless draw. I just think, unless you get some of your players back, I think we've got the opportunity to start a bit more aggressively than maybe we have in the last couple of games against you. I don't think it's going to be a massive, we're not going to put 3 or 4 past you, but I do fancy us to win it.
Yeah, I think our main issue is we haven't got any attacking players to go the other way and force you back. So it will just be probably waves. Whereas previously there would have been a bit of a threat that might have made you think and drop back a bit.
Exactly that. In the West Ham game within the first half, we just weren't getting up the pitch, and you could see at half time Hal must have said something to him because we were like evidently 20 yards further up. And I think just with the amount of players that you're missing, I think that's why I think Trippier this week is. He's in the same pick because as long as he gets through the international break, he will be given license to really get up on that side of the pitch. And
I hope he gets a niggling little injury. Personally, not bad. I don't wish that on him, but a niggling little injury because I don't own him, and I'm inclined to think the same. Yeah, I'd said on Monday that I think. Obviously, the kind of the big three, if you will, have all got really good home fixtures. But like in any other time, you'd be looking at this with Palace's attacking issues, and it does feel like it would be a low-scoring game. And trips, it'd be a captaincy, a real consideration in most weeks. Have you got him at the moment, Si?
I haven't. No, I've got Botman. As I said, I think he's going to come back. I've looked at, I've even considered just in some tinkers doing the cardinal sin of taking a -4 to get him in and benching the midfield player that I would be using. So I haven't got the money to do a straight swap, but I think it's worth it. I think if you're ever going to take a -4 for a defender and not play the other player involved in that double transfer, it'd probably be a fixture like this.
Yeah, I was generally saying before Sheffield United -4 for a defender. I don't know about that. But yeah, he would be the one, wouldn't he? I mean, he's best defensive asset in the game at the moment, isn't
he? Yeah, he's back to the kind of the BPS magnet he was like at the start of last season, just with the amount of crosses he's putting in. But he's seemed to have developed this new technique, or I don't know if he was doing this at Spurs, where he's kind of volleying it with his inside of his foot. And he's done it 3 times this season.
The assist for Isak the other day. Yeah, he has got that in his locker. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's doing it regularly. He's he's obviously feeling his technique, and he's got a lot of confidence. And I love seeing when a player that's non-scorer has confidence in their ability and to pass the ball, and it's kind of rife with him at the moment. Even his set pieces are pretty good, and generally, actually, despite his reputation, they're typically not. But I think that elevates a couple of other players in the team as well. Like Dan Burn could have scored a couple at the weekend as well. And if we're going to win 1-0 or potentially 2-0, which I think is probably the maximum that it could be at the weekend. You're going to expect those defenders to be in and amongst most of the points.
I'll have you know that assist at West Ham was very similar to an assist he got for Delhi against Real Madrid at Wembley in the Champions League, actually. It's that ball where if you've got someone like an Eriksen, or I think was it Gamera's played the pass for Trippier? If you've got that relationship, he'll go. But he doesn't do it so much for you like he used to do it for us. He rather more supports from deep is how I've always found it when he's been with yourselves.
Oh, not always. I think it's kind of game state, and I think he is probably managing himself a little bit, and Hal's kind of managing him a little bit. And you honestly, I didn't even really notice it, I think, until Livramento played in the cup, and you saw what the marauding kind of right back, because we're so used to seeing him and take up great positions. But yeah, when you see a different type of player playing in his position, it was interesting. But I think second half against West Ham, he was clearly told to kind of get up to the pitch more, and that was kind of evident. And I think from the off, that would be the strategy for Palace as well, particularly with Mitchell's playing left back. I know he seems to have kind of improved and gotten better, but I still don't think he's that much of a threat going the other way.
Are you a Trippier owner?
No, I'm a Dan Burn owner. So I'm pleased to hear Si saying that maybe he'll be a attacking asset in that game.
He should have scored, but he didn't. So that's Dan Burn all over, though. He should have probably had about 10 in his Newcastle career by now.
Yeah. He's definitely not captaincy asset, though, is he? So compared to Trippier.
Clip that, please, Nico.
Yeah, it's possible.
I mean, if the score's 1-0 and he gets on the end of a Trippier cross, he's more than likely to score the same, if not more points. So as I
Yeah.
said, I think that's probably more likely than Wilson or Isak going off against Palace.
Yeah, I think, I mean, looking at the injuries, I think Takura and Lerma should both be back for the game, hopefully. I don't know about Ward at right back because it's not really clear what the injury is. But I think most of the defensive players are back. And so you're right in thinking I don't think it'll be like an 8-0 like it was against Sheffield United. I think it'll probably be, I mean, I think you'll dominate the game. I think you'll create a lot of chances. You'll have the ball in a lot of dangerous areas. But I think Sam Johnston's in great form. I think two centre-backs are very good. And so I think it will be, probably a 2-0 or something like that. I don't expect us to get anything from the game. But I think in terms of set piece weakness is something that's been perceived in the past, and certainly under Vieira that may have been the case. But I was looking at the Opta, the analysts, XG. They sort of divide it up into open play and set pieces and give you an idea of what different teams are likely to concede or have conceded from open play versus set pieces. And I think our XG conceded from set pieces is like the third best in the league compared to open play. So, but
do you know if we were up there? Because I know we don't tend
you're
to
second.
concede. Yeah.
So it's Arsenal, Newcastle, then Palace, basically in terms of XG conceded from set pieces. But I mean, I think it will be a situation where we're not able to sort of mount an attack effectively, and as a result, it keeps coming back to us. So I think you're more likely to score from open play. Basically, I think.
If I said to you now, Rory, you were going to score in this game at Newcastle, would you be surprised?
Yeah, I'd be like, who scored? Where's it come from? I mean, there's been one goal in the last 3 Palace games. We've got 3 clean sheets, and it was a set piece, Andersen, and it was, it was a bit of a low XG chance.
Can I ask, do you feel that way about the game afterwards as well?
The Forest game?
Because after Newcastle, you got my team.
Oh, in that game, I think we could. I don't know who'll be back for that. I think you guys leave a decent amount of space on the counter attack. Yeah, and also it's at home, and it's a night fixture under the lights and everything that goes with that. And
yeah,
but yeah, I don't expect to score. I think if you wanted to get Tottenham and Newcastle assets in the next 2 games, it's probably safe. I think that they'll probably do okay defensively.
But in a weird way, the defensive assets might be better than the offensive assets for both over the next 2. Would that be fair?
Yeah, possibly, because I think Roy has sort of mentioned, I think he gave an interview recently. He was talking about Elise and Eze in particular. Those are the 2 he wants back most, because the last 10 games of last season we were quite good going forward. But until then, he's got to play a different way. And I think that's more sort of trying to shut up shop, basically park the bus and trying to prevent the opposition from playing with it.
The reason I ask that is it's obviously selfish reason, but there's also fantasy reason as well. Like if you've got a fit Newcastle defender in 9, it's obviously going to play. There's no doubt about it. But in 10, you've got like Arsenal at home to Sheffield United. You've got Brighton at home to Fulham. You've got Newcastle at Wolves. You've got Chelsea at home to Brentford. There might be a bit. Villa at home to Luton. West Ham at home to Everton. There's loads of potential defensive options where there's been interest so far this season. So if someone's sitting there, for example, with Trippier, Saliba, Cash, Udogie, there's every chance you're going to leave Udogie out at Palace. I would think under that circumstance. So it's something for people to consider, subject to what they've got rotation wise. How important?
With those fixtures, you could play 5 at the back. It depends on your other assets, but with those players, you can play.
What if one of them's Andersen? Though I've got Andersen. I'm thinking of hedging my bets, and if I don't buy another Newcastle defender this weekend, I'm probably just going to play him on the off chance that it is another 0-0.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that. That'll definitely be our aim for the game, and he could get something from a set piece. He's definitely he's our most potent threat. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say he's our most likely chance of getting a goal, but that's the kind of situation we're in at the moment with the injuries, that he's potentially in contention to be one of our most potent attacking threats as well from set pieces. So,
highest scoring defender in the game, mate.
Yeah, I think in correspondent week, and I think you said it again more recently on a podcast, if it's Guehi and Andersen, you just pick the cheaper one. And that's a fair judgment, because it's more Palace defensive returns. We've got 4 clean sheets in 8 games. But I think Andersen does offer something else a little bit more going forward. I say that, and I bought Guehi in on wildcard last week. So
how did he get free bonus and Andersen didn't? I watched the game and I thought Andersen created a big chance with the cross, and I didn't see what the discrepancy was. I don't know. I didn't watch it obviously as closely as you would have.
Well, there was one moment with Guehi where he ran past 5 players and then nearly got an assist. So I don't think it's necessarily based on that. Guehi is the way I describe the two is Andersen is more of an instinctive player, and he's like kind of better technically. Guehi's more of a heavily coached player. So the goal against Man United, I think Guehi would have taken a touch and laid it back to the edge of the box rather than take the shot on. So Andersen will take on those more high risk chances than Guehi will. So Guehi does a lot of things that probably do well for bonus points in terms of ball retention and tackles and interceptions and things like that. Whereas Andersen goes for a bit more of a Hollywood pass sometimes.
If you look though, just looking across the last few seasons, comparing the two from the offensive perspective, that was Andersen's second goal for you, I think, in the last couple of seasons.
What's the other one away at the Etihad?
Sorry, it's third goal. Sorry, the last couple of seasons. So yes, was last season, wasn't it? 4-2 defeat quite early in the season.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
So he scored 3 no assists in this season and the one before, and Guehi's 1 goal, no assist last year, 2 goals, 1 assist the year before. I mean, neither of them are going to be prolific, are they? From that perspective, and that's why I'd always said just go. We discussed it literally in Correspondent Week. If one goes up in price a lot more than the other, just get the cheaper one. And it might even be, I don't know if Guehi is inclined for a draw. I suppose with the recent clean sheets, he'd probably stick at 4.5-ish, I would imagine, and probably start getting interest.
I brought him in, so I hope he doesn't drop. But I don't think so. Partly because, I mean, even if he does go down for the next 2 weeks, he'll probably go up afterwards because of the fixtures.
But that's interesting you said that though, guys. The reason I got Andersen is because I thought he might double price rise in the short time that I might own him, and I had the money, so I went that way instead. And he looks like he might go up again.
Yeah. Well, people are sheep, aren't they? And they'll just follow the recent returns and the goal at Old Trafford.
I mean, look, he's the highest scoring defender in the game. There's no reason to tell people not to go there, but I think it's probably hit that level now.
Yeah.
Where for me, I would just say, to be honest, I was saying it last week, just go Guehi now.
Yeah, probably. I mean,
my take.
Yeah, it won't be such a big points difference between the two that justifies the price difference, I don't think.
No, and also it may even be that it goes a little bit more. I mean, I just had a check. According to the price prediction sites, Guehi is more likely to go up than go down in forthcoming weeks. But you'd probably need a clean sheet against Newcastle or Tottenham for that to happen. Whereas if Andersen stays near the top, he'll keep getting the investment, particularly when these fixtures swing for you. Because as you alluded to, Rory, from game week 11, Burnley away, Everton at home, Luton away, West Ham away is a fixture that you won last season, and then Bournemouth at home 11-15 as a group of 5 is an absolutely super run of fixtures. And it kind of falls into line where I can see people who perhaps wildcard more in 10 than now will maybe want a Palace defender, even if it means benching it against Tottenham. And then suddenly if Andersen's at sort of 4.95, it might become a little bit pricey to be doing that sort of thing, maybe. Yeah,
possibly. I think our defensive assets, as I said, Lerma and Doucouré being back will make the defensive assets a lot stronger. The 2 fullbacks don't offer anything going forward, really. Johnston's potentially someone to get in because he is making a lot of saves. And when the fixtures turn the other way, he'll get quite a few save points, I think. So I think people will go in for a lot of for at least one Palace defensive asset at that point. But I think at that stage as well, we'll get some more attacking assets back. I think Elise should be back. Hopefully, if not the Burnley game, the one after. And then Edouard is already back. So having attacking assets back suits. It almost makes our defensive assets stronger because we have a threat going the other way. So it won't just build up. But yeah, that's a great run of fixtures for us. And I think we'll get at least 2 wins there. So given that we've got 4 clean sheets from 8 so far this season, 3 in a row before these 2 fixtures, which maybe we won't get one in, but in that run, I would expect from those 5 fixtures, maybe 2 clean sheets, which for defensive assets will probably be a good return.
Yeah, I'm on Johnstone. I'm obviously aware a lot of people will be on Areola. Obviously, the next 2 is awkward. I'm play Turner, I think, this week, and I'll just play Johnstone against Tottenham, and it'll be what it'll be. After that's a good run. I've got no intention to move that, particularly obviously with Dean Henderson having the injury, which I presume is that was always the concern with it. It's like always lingering in the background. That's not even a concern at this stage. So for me to start flipping and go Areola to get Guehi, it's not going to happen. I'm just going to go with Johnstone. I think he's now the highest scoring FPL goalkeeper joint, I think, at the moment, as it stands. So yeah, Rory, all these defensive guys, fairly interesting. So I'm interested to get your opinion on Johnstone and what you think of him actually as a goalkeeper.
Better than Pickford in every sense.
Is he better than Nick Pope? Because Gareth Southgate seems to think so at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, Pope definitely has moments where he looks less composed and obviously has issues playing the ball out with his feet. I think Pope's mistakes, because maybe I don't know if it's because of his looks a bit goofy, seem to be slightly larger than not every goalkeeper. Obviously, you've got like the likes of Anana and stuff. Whereas like Johnstone just seems like just a solid keeper that likes to make saves. And he's just good at the fundamentals. I'll confess I haven't watched enough of him like intently and very closely to say whether I think he's better than Nick Pope at all facets of the game, but I'm sure he can't be worse with the ball at his feet than Pope is, unfortunately.
Is that why he's not in the England squad?
Yeah, I'd say so. He didn't start the season very well. Then he had a really good run of form, and then obviously the issue with the West Ham game where he kind of dropped that clanger coming out and just in no man's land. But that was after the squad was announced, so that had nothing to do with it. Yeah, I think it's just his distribution with his feet. I mean, I'd still put him in there just for, as I think Rory knows from last season, like penalty wise, where he's a good shot stopper. I don't think that currently, I don't know if you've got the same kind of frame and someone that you might want to chuck in goal for a penalty shootout in the mix with the other keepers.
Yeah, I just think, in personal opinion, I've got nothing against Sam Johnstone. I think he's a very decent goalkeeper. I'd be more comfortable, I think, next summer if Pope was in the squad, purely because he's only going to get on the pitch if there's an injury or something. And then I think at that point you need the experience, and he's got the experience now of playing right at the top level. Yes, not as good with his feet. I guess, do you think, Si, there will come a point where he becomes a problem for Newcastle? In the sense of if you evolve enough to where there's an expectation to really challenge for a title, for example.
Yeah, I sign another, depending on, it's never, I don't think it's going to ever be a priority position for us in terms of like, we are slightly restricted in what we can spend each summer, and hopefully that burden will decrease. But I do expect us to sign a goalkeeper next year. I think Dubravka will be on his way. Karius will forever be a third choice keeper that's just happy to pick up a paycheck training, which I've got no issues with being a third choice keeper.
And he's
don't really have a youngster coming through. And that, in his brown gloves. And we haven't really got a young goalkeeper coming through that looks like he might. Like we all had pretty high hopes of Woodman. I think just physically he was never going to be big enough to really take that mantle up. So yeah, I do expect us to buy a goalkeeper next summer. I just don't. I think with Lascelles coming into, we haven't talked about him yet. Big tasty, but I think with him coming with his contract coming up, I think centre back the priority. I still think at some point we do need to sign that world class right winger to replace Almiron, and that's the kind of the two gaping holes I think in our team currently, and a third striker really.
Is he Johnstone? Is he worthy of being in that squad, Rory? Or are you surprised by that as well when you think about it?
He's not put a foot wrong for us, really. Maybe the Wolves game and the Arsenal game where he gave away 2 penalties just with lapses in concentration. But I think he is good enough there to be third choice England goalkeeper. He's not as good as Ramsdale. He's not as good as Pickford, probably.
Ramsdale's not even playing, so...
Yeah, so he's got to be... Which makes it... forward, if he's not playing next summer, then maybe Pope will get in the squad, but it might not be at Johnston's. Might not be Johnstone who makes way.
He's very off topic, but I think if there is intention for Johnstone to be in the squad next time, he should play on Friday night in a friendly. You got to get him in the sticks and get him at least up the field playing in front of the crowd at Wembley and stuff like that. Otherwise, it's going to be a big ask if suddenly he's get thrown into a tournament next summer and he's got like no caps and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a very sort of rare situation that the third choice goalkeeper actually makes an appearance at a major tournament. And if you look at other countries, it's often just the third choice goalkeeper is often someone who's got maybe 5 or 6 caps and is just a sort of good person to have around the squad, really, rather than anything else. So maybe it's a bit too much of a focus on it in England in particular, because we happen to have a good generation of goalkeepers, but no real standout. But Johnston's been brilliant for us. I mean, he's been phenomenal since he's come in.
Well, so a big tasty. A few people bought him last week, 3.9. Have they made a big mistake, mate?
I wouldn't say a big mistake. I think it falls into. I think the real question is, what do you think about the Newcastle strikers in that third slot? Because I wouldn't buy him if he was your only Newcastle defender. I've even looked at it because I've got Baldock at the moment who's sitting on the same price, and I've considered just in the short term, because I don't think I'm going to go with the Newcastle striker until one of them is out injured again. I'm not going to pick another Newcastle midfielder. I've got Gordon. If I can't afford to get to Trippier, I think for me he makes he's a decent fifth defender option for this week. That's what I'm waiting on the Botman.
If Botman's not back, right? Yeah.
Well, if Botman's not back, Botman's a left-sided centre back. Lascelles has to play on the right. It's not inconceivable that with Cher being away on international duty, that he plays Lascelles and Botman. I mean, I've seen them together, and it's not looked pretty in pre-season games, but it's not inconceivable that he would pick those two if there is he wants to give Cher a rest or something happens on international duty. I think there's a few too many questions to make that move now. Although I'd like to, just because I want to get rid of Baldock out of my team, stinking my fence up with his constant flags and dropping in price. But yeah, it's something I consider myself, to be honest, and I haven't ruled it out.
Okay, if let's assume you're on wildcard hypothetically this week, who would you go for from Cher, Botman, Burn if Botman is fit?
Who would I go if I could only pick one?
Yeah, Cher, Botman, or Burn. I
would, at their prices, I'd actually be inclined to go for Burn. Just from what I've seen in the last game, I feel like he had license to really get forward, and I think it's been proven now that he's not a kind of makeshift centre back. He is left back, and I don't think the other two options we've got there are going to come in the team anytime soon. I think attacking wise, he's starting to put it together and create more chances. So actually, I think for the price, because he's four cheaper than Shara's at the moment, I would be inclined to go there. I'm just going to have a quick look at their ownership as well, because I always tend to quite like going with the lowest owned if I can.
I would imagine that's Burn. I would have thought
it's Shara actually.
Is it?
So he's 6.4. Burn is now 10.6. So yeah, if you've got the money, I think Shara's always going to be more of an attacking threat, and he can score different types of goals, whereas Burn's always more likely or not just want to get his head on something about 3 yards out if he can.
So, question that we deliberated a lot. If you think Burn, fair enough. Is Kieran Trippier worth 2.2 more than Dan Burn?
Squad dependent.
That's such a bottle drop answer. So.
Is he the best defender in the game? Yeah, by a mile. So
Joachim Andersen says, "Hold my beer." By the way, mate.
Well, I've got both. Actually, I haven't got both. He's been in my team about 8 different ways this national window. I just haven't pulled the trigger yet. He's the best defender in the game by far, particularly with when you see what's going on with like Trent and Liverpool's defence, and the fact they're looking unlikely to keep clean sheets. I think Trippier, even when he goes up to 7, which he will, I think at the moment it's worth it. It's just, as I say, squad dependent. So I there is a way I can get to Haaland, Salah, and Trips, but I can't get to Son or Saka really without making like massive other sacrifices.
Yeah, that's the question. It's not that someone like a Son or a Saka or a Trippier or Watkins or whatever is not great choice. We probably will have all of them. For me, Trips looks like he's probably going to be a sacrifice for me, part because of that argument. But I do need Sven Botman back fit, I think, to make that argument worthwhile. What is interesting as well, I think, looking at your fixtures really longer term, Si, you go to Anfield is at Liverpool is your last game of this year. The fixtures beforehand it looks largely good as a group, and there's probably, let's say, maybe 3 ugly ones and 3 ugly home ones and 1 ugly away one. Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United all at home between game weeks 11 and 14. You also come to White Hart Lane in game week 16, but that's the only kind of real rough on paper away game before Liverpool is Tottenham in 16. Arsenal, Chelsea, United all at home. Is there such a thing as a rough home game for Newcastle?
I don't think there's such thing as a rough home game for Trippier, no. And actually, I think if you look at our fixtures throughout, I know we're not going to look at the entire season, but the fixture list has been a bit weird for us this year. We've got 3 or 4 like groups, really amazing fixtures, and then a horrible one. Like, and it repeats that cycle all the way through the season. So, are you going to want to play Botman in all of those games? No. Are you going to want to play Trippier in all those games? Yeah, you would. Not just for the price, but any game he can potentially go off. So I think that just kind of leans into what type of Newcastle assets you would potentially want to get. But no, I'd say like we fancy ourselves against any team at home. There are certain fixtures that I think, we will score less and we will be less likely to concede, but you can say it the same as everyone. So if you play the fixtures, I think at home you play Newcastle players regardless.
Okay. Rory, are we expecting 4-4-2 from Palace, subject to availability in forthcoming weeks? I'm thinking particularly obviously with Elise out, Eze out.
Yeah,
Is
I
this
would
what
think
we should
so.
expect?
I think so. I think Mateta has done enough to say that maybe he should start, especially in the absence of Eze and Elise, just to get us up the pitch a little bit. In these 2 games, that's probably what will happen. And Edouard and Mateta will take it in turns to drop in. The other one will lead the line. So that'll be sort of typical old school, trying to restrict the opposition in a 4-4-2. But I think once the good fixtures start, we'll go back to a 4-2-3-1, and hopefully we'll have a few more players back. But yeah, needs must at the moment, I think, in a 4-4-2.
We have 7 midfielders flagged currently, and Joe Riedeveld is not one of them.
Yeah.
And he's got a problem as well, isn't he?
I think that was just cramp. That was the first game he started for us in 22 months. So,
which gives you an indication of the injury problems that you've been having.
Yeah, he's not a bad player. I think Vieira just didn't like him, to be honest. But I think Lerma should be back. Roy said he'll probably start training at the Monday, the week coming from when this is recorded. So, and then Doucouré's gone on international duty with Mali, so that
he's fine.
Yeah, so that the double pivot will be fine. It's unlikely that he'll start Jezrin Raksaki. I think most Palace fans want to see that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about it, yeah.
He got man of the match against Forest for us, voted for by fans, but he obviously came on for Schlupp in the game. So Roy didn't start him. But he put in a good performance. So he could do that. If he wants to stick to a 4-2-3-1, he could start him. But I think he'll probably start with Mateta and Edouard because they have more Premier League experience, and then bring Jezrin off the bench and maybe shift formation.
What is he? Is he left winger, right winger? What is he?
Right winger, left footed. He played for Charlton last season. I think he got, off the top of my head, 14 goals, 5 assists in League One.
Nice.
And ideally, he would have gone on loan to a championship team and we'd have got another winger in, but we didn't after Wilf left. So if we've got another winger in and he did well in the championship next season, he might have replaced Elise next season. Sorry, if he did well in the championship this season, he might have replaced Elise next season.
I guess there's a chance if Schlupp's out, he could start at St James's though, right?
Yeah, it's possible he could start on the right. I don't know if he could start in a 4 on the right, but if Schlupp is out, then that is probably what would happen, and then maybe Ayew would go central and Edouard would start on the left in a 4-2-3-1. But Schlupp supposedly was injured for the week before the Forest game and he played half fit. So I think there's a possibility that he will be fit after the international break, but I haven't actually heard anything about what his injury is.
That just sounds like a recipe for getting more injuries. So.
Well, it's that or
bringing players back that. Yeah.
It's a side knock on here, I think, for FPL. No, we're not recommending the industrial Jordan Ayew, but the industrial Jordan Ayew will run up and down with Kieran Trippier if he plays there, won't he? And Jeffrey Schlupp he's fine defensively as a left-sided midfielder as well, right?
Yeah, that would, both of them are sort of defense first wingers.
Yeah,
basically, in terms of the way that they go about the game, whereas Raksaki would be not necessarily so switched on defensively. So if either of them does start, they will primarily mark Trippier, probably because they see him as more of a threat than Dan Burn.
What would you say to someone who's still owned Edouard? I would left it there last few weeks.
Keep him for the next 2 weeks. I would say keep him for the good run, because when we get the players back, at least they should be back for the Burnley game. Eze, they said, maximum 6 weeks. So hopefully he'll be back for the Everton game. I think it's Burnley, then Everton. So I think hopefully he'll be back for that game. And when we have those two back, I mean, I did have a sort of, I thought we would replace him. We were in for Ekatike. But Edouard is someone who I do think if he played 38 games in the Premier League, he'd get more than 10 goals. And he scored 4 goals in 9 starts before the World Cup last season. He's obviously started this season. He's scored 4 so far, and he's been injured for 1 game, so 4 and 7. I think he will continue to tick along, maybe 1 and 4 or something.
It's also worth playing in nearly all of these games. I think with one he's played 70, but in the other games he's played 90 minutes basically in all of them as well. So I presume therefore, if anyone was looking for a kind of 8th attacker, 3rd forward on wildcard, if someone was asking about Mateta, that would just be a clear no for you, would it?
Yeah, Mateta's not in the first 11 when everyone's fit, but he'll play the next couple of weeks. Maybe he'll do something in the next couple of weeks that convinces Roy that he should start. But I think Edouard has done enough so far this season to be Roy's first choice.
Okay, so we'll wrap up with a few of your FPL assets. I know you already said it, but Isak and Wilson, is it just literally your opinion seems to be similar to mine? If one gets injured and is out for a significant period, it's buy the other one. Otherwise, just leave it be.
Slightly more nuanced than that, James. When I brought Wilson in, it was more the rotation that I expected with a quite set Champions League. Both players were fit. Yeah, Premier League, Champions League, and also EFL as well, Cup. We're still in that same situation. I just think the slight cloud over injury is actually to both players. So I think Wilson obviously showed that he was back, but I think he probably wouldn't have made the bench if we had more options. So if Joel Linton had been there, or we had someone else that could potentially come off, and Howe said that he played the maximum amount of time that he wanted to. He didn't want to play him for that long half hour, but he had to because Isak said that he needed to come off as well. And there's been a slight trend with him, and towards like the last 10 minutes of games and stuff, he's kind of shown a little bit of fragility, I think, in terms of his fitness. I still don't think it's quite there, and maybe it just never will be. He does put a lot of effort in. I do think, as it stands, that Wilson will probably get the Palace game, just on the fact that he's been with Howe for 2 weeks and would have trained.
Well, Isak's pulled out the Sweden squad as well, so.
Is he? Okay, well, that'll be why then. I think I was surprised he actually got called up as well. But if he's fair, I would have assumed that he would have got the Dortmund game anyway, and they would have just flipped it potentially. So yeah, there's always a bit of a flip of a coin. I kind of decided to. I think as well at the moment, there's just other strikers that are around the same sort of price like Watkins that everyone's sort of flooding to, and I think it's an easy call to go for him. But I've owned both already this season. I'm probably going to own both again before the end of the season. It's just a case of jumping on at the right time.
Yeah, both potentially great assets and wouldn't have them far from my thinking. A quick question just before we finish on those two. If they were both out, hypothetically, who do you think would play up front against Palace?
Well, weirdly, Ellie Andersen played kind of central against West Ham in the first half, and no one can quite figure out why. It must have been like a tactical thing. Maybe it was just to get Isak more of the ball on the left. I still believe that Anthony Gordon is our 3rd choice striker to play in that position. Now with Barnes out, that might slightly alter things. But if Joel Linton's back, I think we've got 2 players in Toon Army and Andersen that have proved that he can play left midfield. So I think you'd see Joel Linton go left midfield, and I think you might see Gordon go through the middle.
Okay.
And I don't think that's the sort of player that either Palace defender would probably like to face. I might be wrong because obviously physically he's not there, but he brings other things. So I think he was an interesting shout anyway for this weekend, purely on I think the way that Palace set up on both sides. I think leans more into them. As we've talked about, like guarding Trippier and stuff, I think that makes Gordon an interesting option on the other side anyway.
Not Almiron?
I don't know what it is about. I mean, I love Miggy, and the thing is with him, when he gets in these scoring streaks, you kind of it seems to like happen like one every game, and then before you know it, it's 4 or 5 games in, and he's he's like scored in all of them. And it always, like, for me, I don't know, I have a bit of a blind spot for him. It always feels like too late or just not the right time. I have owned him a few times, but he'll just tick. He's going to tick. He's going to score points. I think he's like average at the moment is something like 7 points a game, which is like right up there. Obviously didn't score in the last one, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I've got a bit of a Miggy blind spot.
He scored his first Premier League goal against Palace, I think, for Newcastle. He didn't score for like 50 games or something, and then scored against us.
There you go. Thank you for that. Proved into a decent asset, but
I don't think it'd be.
Yeah, I would never say. I would never tell anyone not to get Miggy. Just, I don't know, for his price, and like, yeah, again, maybe I will own him. I don't know. I think like Newcastle midfield is not the place you want to be buying 2 tickets. I think Gordon at his price for me just feels like the better option.
You got Gordon, Rory?
Nope.
In thoughts?
No, I was planning to roll this week because I wildcarded last week. If I got him in, it would potentially be for Diaby, but I think that would just be knee-jerk because Diaby didn't play well, but he's got good fixtures, so he could return against us. I think, Joel Ward would be the weak point, or Klein if he starts. Right back is for us potentially a little bit of a weak point in that defence.
Yeah, Gordon's kind of growing, I think, within a community choice because you've got him kind of like Neto, Huang, and there's a number of others at that price. Now this suspension's over, and you look at some of these Newcastle fixtures coming out, you think that's a pretty decent buy. And the Barnes injury, he's going to play nearly every game, I suppose, isn't he, so?
Yeah, he's playing every game. And fitness-wise, he's proved he can do it. It's just whether he can stop getting booked every other game.
Yeah, I think
suspended again.
I think he's made a really good start for you. And I think it really helps. He had a really good tournament for the England under-21s in the summer as well. And just quickly, Elliot Andersen, Si, he spoke about 2 tickets. There's another one you can have there at 4.4, right? And we know he's not going to play every game, but if people want to go with 3 up front and a cheapy midfielder, that's an option, surely.
Yeah, my dad's got him in his team.
Is he beating you at the
4.4. A goal's coming. What's that?
Is he beating you, your dad, yeah?
Oh, no, not quite. Almost. But no, not after my 12k game week rank this week. I should clarify that before the pod, we were talking about I had a 9.5 the week before. So
less congrats, Si.
So,
so basically, he was at 9.5 million and about 12k. So over the last 2 weeks, you've averaged about a game week rank of about 4.75 million or so.
Don't. Let me have this one, please.
You can have it, mate. You can also give us. You can also give us
a small shout out on the FPL pod, but I didn't get one on yours. So I must be doing your league must be better than.
You just give yourself one on this one, mate. So you can have that for free, mate. Did they show your face as well or not? No.
No. So I was second behind Alon. So Alon actually,
he smashed it, didn't
he?
Yeah. You get 100 or so this week.
No,
he had a game week rank of about 2k, didn't he? I saw he smashed it.
Yeah, it's because we both got Sterling and just had issues elsewhere. But Andersen definitely helped. Speaking of Andersen, a goal is coming, and if he gets one, he that might just open up. He's a very talented footballer, and I'm coming round to his best position being in that midfield 3 and not left wing, which is where we kind of had to play him against West Ham. I think coming onto the ball and he's physically. He's a bit of a beast, actually. He really has physically grown up in the last year or so. Really, really talented kid. Weirdly, some aspects of Foden in him a little bit, but physically he's bigger. He's obviously not got the same level of technical ability, and he's not as playing forward. But all this talk of Foden playing in midfield, it kind of makes you think of what Andersen could potentially turn into. I think as 4.4 midfielders go, he's a decent shout. It's just. No, he will be rotated as soon as more players come back.
First time I saw him, Ross Barkley was the player I thought of. And I don't mean current Ross Barkley. I mean the Ross Barkley that broke through at Everton.
I think he's got more about him, and he's not necessarily as tricky as maybe I remember Ross Barkley being. But yeah, there is elements of that. But yeah, I think he's a super talent. I think, Powell's done really well in terms of how he's managed him and kept him in amongst the squad. And we've got another one actually, Lewis Miley, who potentially might get. He got EFL Cup minutes had to be taken off at half time, but that was against City. I think you'll see him again against Man U, playing him in midfield. And I think he's potentially one at the end of the season, depending on how it's going. You know, he's, I would say, probably behind Bruno and Tonali, our kind of third defensive sort of midfielder slot. So he might get some minutes towards the end of the season. He might be dirt cheap by then. So
yeah,
one to keep an eye on.
And in terms of ones to keep an eye on as well, I think from Rory's perspective as well, when Elise is back fit at sort of 5.8-ish, and Eze, I guess, will be in sort of the 6 million region by the time he comes back as well, they'll both be worth monitoring quickly, won't they?
Yeah, if they can come back for that run, I think Elise should be back for the start of that 5-game run. But if towards, I wouldn't advocate getting them both in. But yeah, they're both very cheap for what they will produce in those games, I think, in terms of creativity.
Yeah, agreed.
Then the fixtures turn the exact opposite way.
Yes,
for December. So you got to be aware of getting them back out again.
True. Gents, thank you both so much. Si, give us a correct score prediction before we finish, mate.
I'm going to go with 2-0 to Newcastle.
I feel like Rory might say the same. Go on, mate.
I'm going to optimistically say 0-0.
Yes, mate. Last on match of the day. For those who didn't get what we were alluding to earlier, obviously the two teams did play each other 3 times last year, and it was 0-0 on all 3 occasions. Newcastle did win a penalty shootout in the Carabao Cup. I'm going to go 1-0, I think. How many days is the Champions League game afterwards, Si?
We play on the Wednesday. Dortmund games on the Wednesday, then we play on, and then the Saturday. So our next 2 Premier League games after Champions League games are both on Saturdays. I don't know why that is, but so yeah, the one after was Tuesday. So day less.
All right. Good luck in the champs. Thank you both very much, gents. Si, anything you want to plug before we finish, mate?
Not really. I'm good.
Okay, mate. Fine. And Rory, anything for you, mate?
No, I'm on Twitter. I think that's usually in the text for promoting.
I'll stick it in.
Yeah, cool.
Good stuff. Thank you both so much, gents. I'll be streaming with Ask James for you tomorrow. We've got 2 more COTs for you next week as well. Tottenham versus Fulham with Ricky Saunders and Zara Curran, and Manchester City versus Brighton with Johnny Pringle and Sam Murray. Just leaves me to say thanks again so much to Si and Rory. Good luck, gents. Cue music, please, man child.